Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going to talk about the class project. Class project for fundamental of software engineering, class SE230. I think you should provide the following, which it comes in the following slides. Well, first of all, covering page and table of contents. Those are very important things, Cover page, you should have a cover page contains the following: university logo of university, project title, project member name and ID, project member names and ID. The project members, which it is the student who work on that one, what are the names and the ID. And you could add a section also. All your documentation must have a standard logo of the original format, department name, class name, etc. So we need really a professional cover page, which it is really show the logo of the university, the department name, the class name and number, then the student number and names. Right away, after the second page or the cover page, we have to have the table of contents, محتويات الdocument, and it has to be a professional one. There are indentation. You start with a task, then subtask, then subtask, etc. with indentation. All the tasks, the phases, the activities you are going to do in table of contents, it will show everything. Right away, when you look at the table of contents, you'll find out what's going on in that document. Now we'll go to the project itself. Group construction. We construct our group with 3 to 4 students. The other one used to be 4 to 5, but there are actually 3 to 4. For every project member, must assign a project. For every project member must assign a project manager. And not really a manager who really is going to start act like really a boss or whatever, but probably a coordinator who can coordinate the effort of all members of that project. Project manager will divide the task, and actually that's the job of the project manager, in the real world. But here I think we should divide the task between us as a group member here, based on our skill and experience and knowledge, whatever. Even though I think you should understand fully the whole project, even if you did part of the project in analysis or in the design, I think you should know the whole thing about the project. You could be asked a question for something you have not done it. Somebody else did it. Any group must provide a report about each member activity in the project, such as meeting minutes, main roles, who's done what, etc. And probably this is what really we're gonna ask you, what did you do with this project? What activity, what task you finished? It is not necessary that all members get the same mark. The mark will be assigned based on the work for every member and overall knowledge of the documentation. Plus the presentation, the way you present your knowledge and your skills in the presentation. Well, second step, we have to choose, which it is the first phase of the technical thing we are doing with this project, is choosing the project. The best way to choose a project as a class project is the project you know about. Since we don't have a user to give us the information we need, it is good, to have some knowledge about the project, the one you choose, or somebody who knows about that project. So it's easy, you could get hold of him and ask him about, those requirement or whatever really your question about. We must provide the following. First of all, introduction, preface, problem definition, process model, whatever, all they come under introduction. Either you itemize introduction with just a paragraph and then you put the problem definition, what's the problem you face in order to, what's the circumstances around you which it is, come up with that project. What are the reasons of that project? Or you just put them in one paragraph. It is general information about the project, probably what's the problem we face, or what really the objective of your project, etc. And the last, probably a line or two, you could say what kind of process model I am going to use and why. I'm using waterfall because my project so and so. Then after that, we have to find out what the scope. The scope is the boundary, the context diagram. The context diagram represented by either a circle or a square, and around it the stakeholder, the people who's going to interact with the system. It could be a people, or it could be another system. So we'll show the context diagram and the external entity of it. Of course, we decide what process model we are going to use, or process models you used for the project, and why. Since we define the scope, the boundary, what we are going to do, I think it's easy now for us to find out what kind of risk probably we may face. And the risk here is the project risk. We don't want the product risk, we don't want the organization risk, we want the project risk. The risk, which is probably as like a problem, a constraint, which is probably stop us from fulfilling the project, from finishing the project on time, within budget, and as specified. What kind of risk probably we face in this class project related to our work as a student. Feasibility study, well, feasibility study, really we didn't talk about it a lot because we'll explain it in the class of system analysis and design, but we mainly talk about technical feasibility. Are we technical able and capable of doing it? And do we have the schedule, like schedule feasibility, which it is, do we have the time to finish that project, the time frame, timeline we have, from like January to May or whatever. Yes, we could do it, whatever. Because feasibility study, it's always, we ask our question, which it is ourselves, that is the project really achievable? Is it doable? And financially, technically, operationally, schedulally, etc. Then we put a schedule, a timetable of finishing all activities of the project. We put the timetable, a rough estimation for the activities, the task we are going to do in order to accomplish that. Because if we said that it is feasible schedule, how we know that we're gonna finish it in May? We could really do that, the planning phase. We do it into weeks, starting February 1st through the February 15th. Then we do the analysis, we collect requirement, blah, 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 blah. So that is the way really we should have the timetable. Then we go to the analysis phase. So now we are done with the planning phase. We found that we found the scope, we found it is doable, we found what kind of risk and we plan for that risk to encounter it. Then now we are going, the system or the project will go, then we'll go and find out what kind of requirement we have. So what technique we are going to use. The techniques have to elicit, to gather, to collect, to determine requirement. And here in software engineering, we talk about requirement elicitation. Probably like an interview, a questionnaire, ethnography, use case, all these kinds are technique to collect requirement. What kind of technique you use in order to collect your requirement. Now what's the outcome of that techniques and that meeting and that questionnaire, whatever? We come up with functional and non-functional requirement, and here we have to follow the conventional name for the functional and non-functional. The system shall, the system should. Well, after we find, the technique we are doing, which it is in the analysis phase, we'll continue by having the scope. So we'll represent the scope in a context diagram. We have a context diagram, and around it, the stakeholders, or the people who are going to interact with that system. So context diagram, which is the same one we build it, is built the same one in bullet one in the planning above. We put a use case model, represent some of the process of your project, then class diagram. You should include the class diagram and sequence diagram, behavioral diagram. In this sequence, because use case diagram, we use it to present, the process we are going to do. And actually, sometimes probably class diagram comes before even use case. But since use case, it's scenario-based technique, probably we could really find out, what use cases we have. Then class diagram, the object we have, the major entities we have, the classes we are going to use, and the relation between them as we discuss it in chapter 5. Then after that, we go to the interactive diagram, which is interactive, is the use case, as we said, and the sequence diagram of two processes. We'll do the two processes. We represent them in a sequence diagram. How we accomplish, what is the interaction between these objects, for two processes in your system. Then after that, we'll go and take one process of those the one in sequence diagram and have a behavioral diagram to it, state transition diagram, state chart, again for a two process, which it is now the logic. The logic in the program, it will be represented in the behavioral diagram. Well, now we finish our analysis phase. The analysis phase is done according to the software engineering, but actually there is more activity like the data conceptual modeling, like an ERD, and that one we'll cover it later on. We cover it actually in the database, but it is included in the system analysis and design and for any project. But now we go to the third phase here in software engineering, which it is the design phase. What really we are going to design here is what pattern or patterns we are going to use, which is the architectural design. We have 5 patterns. We need to find out which pattern or patterns, because it's possible that we are going to use 2, 1 or more patterns in our design. So a type of design pattern or patterns you choose to your system in order to accomplish the requirement for your system. Then after you choose that one and you plug it in there in the document, then we go to the testing. What kind of test, as we're gonna finish it later on in chapter, I believe 8, what kind of test we are going to do. And we probably will just put in 4 or 5 test case in case of we are going to write the program. In this project, we are not going to write the program, but we're going to assume that we are going to write the program. We're going to go through the motion of finishing the project completely. So if in this case, if we are writing the program, this is the type of test we are going to do, and these are the test cases we are finishing. By this, we are done now with the design phase. The document, it has to have glossary. Glossary are a key term, probably task, process, you use whatever. We put them at the end of the document. The glossary probably could contain acronym. Acronym, we said, in the class acronym, it's like, like JUST, which stands for Jordan University of Science and Technology. If we mention that in our document or any other acronym, then we put it at the end and do some explanation that just example, which is Jordan University of Science and Technology. It is a university in the north part of Jordan, etc., and some explanation. Appendices, we will talk about the appendix, but the appendix again, it is a relevant thing, but it is not essential. And I doubt it that there is really a reason for a class project to put appendix. Finally, the index. The index is very important. It is the last part, the last thing in that project. The index You could take some key term, some word, some concept, whatever, and you put them there at the last thing, and it's indentation. It could be, a first level index, second index, and like, indentation 1, and then underneath it, it could be, level 2, or you change it and you put it in an indentation. Indentation here, you could really use it in very, very professional. Index, as we said, this is really the last thing, and you could really put probably a few key terms, few words, a few things, and you have to mention in the index the page number. So we have to have a page number for your document. Well, general guidelines here: project member must set up the standard design. I think we should have really a standard, and follow it in our documentation consistently. You can search on the net and find creative tools to produce your documentation and sample of your project on the internet. You could really look at the net and you can find, sample of your project and get some information from there. You must apply a table of contents, as we said. Table of contents, a glossary, appendices, what we said, probably it's not relevant here, an index for your documentation where applicable. Apply the English language standard in writing your documentation. The final project, you must provide all documentation printed on paper for all 3 phases. Actually, now we make him just 1 phase, the whole project, and provide the following information. As we said, title, project number and ID, all documentation, the logo of the university, and all these, professionally done. And paper, we don't know yet. It depends, what's gonna happen, to the semester and how we're gonna handle it with this coronavirus problems. Well, grading the project, the grading of your project would be based on a number of things. Project organization, table of contents, from table of contents to index, contents quality, layout of the page, formatting, design, visual design, production and the print quality, and appropriate use of language. This is the quality thing. We have to understand the sequence of activities we are going to the project. We have to know what really the design activity, what's the analysis activity. As we said, we have a planning, we determine the scope. When we go to the analysis, we determine the technique, then we create the context diagram, we see what's really in. Then we go and have the use case, the class diagram, the sequence diagram, the behavioral diagram. And then we go to the design, we have the architectural design here. So we don't want to mix up those things. Everything really we might draw like a use case, we consider it as a design. The language, it has to be really a professional one. The layout of the page, we don't want to see, like the last line in the page, it's like a header. And the header, it exists on the bottom page, and then the contents of that header, it go to the next page, and we say, well, I think it shows in whatever, but when we print it, no, I think it should be professional. Everything here, it has a mark, and probably you lose some points in anything if it is not professionally done. Well, project presentation, well, each team is required to make 10 to 15 minutes presentation of the project, and that's to be announced later on to see what's going to happen to the semester. The presentation should be prepared using a PowerPoint. You must apply the presentation skills effectively. I think you should really be a professional in your presentation. Time management, very, very important. When we talk about 10 to 15 minutes, it should not exceed 15 minutes, because you need really in 15 minutes or less to present what kind of work you are done, whatever. All team members must be present at their time slot of the discussion. They should be in the presentation. And you should really be ready to answer any question about anything of that project. I don't want you to say that, well, this is not my part. No, it is your responsibility that to understand all the activities done in this project. Even really you did the use case, I think you should really answer a question if there is a question in behavioral diagram example. By this, we finish the project and the information about the project, the whole thing. I think probably there will be a question at the final, which it is in 100 words or less, or 120 words or less. Write what it takes to create a state-of-the-art project using software engineering, which it is if you could abstract what really we talk about in this class project, if we could extract them to 100 or 120 words or less, I think you could get maybe a full mark and the final question. Good luck to you all, and see you.